Hello everyone, so today I'm going to do a video about how I learned the Kana in Japanese. I'm doing this video because it was pretty much requested in the poll because I asked you if you wanted me to do a reaction video or a video about Japanese, and you said Japanese, so here it is. This method is very simple, it's nothing complicated, but don't expect something quick, and I think it's important to emphasize on that, especially if you're serious about Japanese, because learning Japanese is not something you will do quickly. It's a really long process, but it's a really fun one, so I hope that you will enjoy this guide, and let's get started then. In this video, I will assume that you want to also learn how to write the kana, because I really think it's important to be able to do that just for your Japanese language learning practice, but also for everyday life if you go to Japan or if you ever live there. There is a debate as to whether you should learn kanji, and I'm not going to go into that debate right now, but for kana, I definitely think it's important to learn how to write them, so I will talk about this as well in this video. So what I recommend when you're learning the kana is to start with the passive knowledge of kana. What I mean is we're not going to start writing them straight away, we just want to focus on being able to recognize them and also pronounce them. I think it just makes it a bit simpler and a little less overwhelming than if you're trying to do everything at the same time. What I recommend personally is to start with the hiragana and then move on to the katakana, but you'll see that the method is exactly the same. There's no big difference essentially. What I recommend to start with is the guide by Tofugu, which is the ultimate guide to learning hiragana. And the principle of this guide, and I will show you some examples, is to associate each character with a sound or an image. The first example I want to show you is the ki character, because I think it's quite a telling example of how the method works. But here you've got the character for ki, and you actually see that it looks like a key. So that's quite an easy way to remember it, because you know that ki looks like a key, therefore it's pronounced ki. Another example would be the ku sound, which looks like this essentially, yeah. And you can sort of picture a bird making a ku sound, and yeah, so the examples are quite sometimes a bit silly or simple, but I think that really works, and that was personally how I learned the hiragana. That made it much easier. Then I recommend, while you're going through the guide of Tofugu, is to not just try to learn everything in one go, but every 5 characters, use this website, which is a drag and drop activity. It's very basic, but I think it's really efficient. So every 5 characters that you learn, try to sort them out on the table. So for example, on the first side, you've got a, I, U, E, O, and you have to look for the sound. So the E is here. So I've got my E here, my A is here, my I is here, and so on and so forth. And whenever you learn 5 more new characters, then do that again. So the first time you will have to sort out 5 characters, then the next time 10 characters, then 15, then 20, etc, etc. And I think it's a nice way to break it down and not go too quickly, and making sure that the imagery that was in the guide worked well for you. And if you feel like you're struggling to find some characters, then you can revise. So you know early on which characters are more difficult for you, and that just makes it a bit more easy, I think. Then what I recommend is to practice sorting out this table in under 2 minutes. So the first time you might take maybe 5 minutes, then 4, then 3, then 2, etc, etc. I think it's a nice thing to do because it means that you're able to recognize the characters fairly quickly. I don't recommend going through the guide too quickly. Some people say you can learn the hiragana in an hour or in a day. I think that's true, you can, but it's better to maybe do it across 2, 3, 4 days, you know, or even more if you don't have that much time. But I think it's really important to allow your brain to digest information and not try to overwhelm it with just too much information, because, you know, memory works little by refreshing and by building up on it. I think if you do everything in one day, then you might end up mixing up some characters, you might forget a lot of them, and I think it's, I don't know, I don't think it's as efficient. After you've nailed the 46 hiragana characters, you're almost done, but not quite yet. There's a couple more characters which are sort of special, and they take what we call a handakuten and dakuten. Essentially, they're all small sort of punctuation marks, if I simplify it. So for example, you've got on the ka sound, I hope you can see, let's go with the go sound. So on Go, you've got the Go character like this, and then it takes two little sort of brackets, if you will. And this is what we call the dakuten. And the dakuten, what it does is to go from a ko sound to a g sound in that series of characters. Essentially, there's no real way to learn them, in my opinion. I just sort of learned them naturally, but what helped is to know that the basic character without the quotation mark is a voice sound, so it's a sound that doesn't make your cords vibrate, so ko, ko, ko doesn't really vibrate. When you say go, 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 you will feel the vibration much more, and that did help me. As for the handakuten, it's quite simple. Hopefully you can see them at the bottom of the screen. So, for example, the sound ho becomes a po sound. So the handakuten is a pi sound, essentially. That's kind of how I learned them. But really what I did was to see them in context, double check how you pronounce them, which character it is, and then eventually I remembered them, because you can see that the list is not too big and it's based on the basic characters. So it's not as difficult to learn as it is to learn the basic characters. But I'll put some links in the description box below if you want to have more information about these special characters. And as I said at the beginning of the video, whatever I did for the hiragana, there's a katakana version. So the Tofugu website also has a guide for learning katakana, and it's going to be the same thing. So for example, this let's choose this example, why not? So the sound E is like an eagle standing upright. The drag and drop exercise is also available for katakana. So the learning process is going to be exactly the same. I would even say it's a bit easier because some of the katakana characters are a little bit similar to the hiragana, so that's a little bit simpler than learning the hiragana for the first time, I think. And then the last thing to do is to then do a bit of writing practice. So there's a few ways you could do it. Either you take a piece of paper and practice writing the characters, or you can use textbooks. However, for the writing, I recommend to be careful about something, and it's the stroke order. I will show you an example. So I will put that in the description box below if it's a bit too small, but on this table you will see how it should be written, in which order, because you can't really write them randomly in any order you want, because it might make your character end up looking a little bit messy, and it makes it a bit harder to read. And it's just a nice habit to have, especially if you are going to learn the kanji later on, because the kanji requires a certain stroke order when you're writing them. So yeah, I think it's good practice to start getting used to stroke order in Japanese. And I will put a link to that, because the website Tofugu has a page where they show 27 different tables that you can print and, you know, frame in your room, etc., so you can practice them more easily. Yeah, so as I said, you can use a piece of paper to write them, making sure you have the right stroke order. Double check all the time that you're writing it properly. Don't, you know, get used to writing a character wrong and then realize that you have to unlearn the way you write it and then add the new way, the proper way of writing it, because that's a bit frustrating. And then if you're not too keen on just writing characters on a page, you know, randomly, you might even use textbooks. And the textbooks that I recommend are, for example, Japanese from Zero. It actually starts from scratch with the hiragana, so that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It depends if you want to take it slow or really go through it again after you've done the practice on Tofugu. I did that and that was fine. It's just a bit annoying at the beginning that you have the romaji, but it's replaced quite quickly by the hiragana. So that's one way of doing it. Another textbook which will require you to only write in Kana will be Japanese for Busy People. I'm not saying these are the only books you can use, that's just the ones I've used. I know people talk a lot about Genki, but I haven't tried Genki, so I can't really talk about it. But yeah, you can use these books, why not? I think it's quite good to use a textbook as early as possible, because you give the writing a bit more context and you're also learning the language at the same time. So you're learning vocab and grammar all the while practicing the Kana. So that's it for this video. So one more thing I wanted to say is that if you ever realize that you keep forgetting some characters, then take the time to revise again, go back to the guides, do the sort out drag and drop exercise. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's normal. Even sometimes I forget, you know, I mix up ru and ro, the ru and ro character because they're so similar. But it's normal. Every now and then you have to review and eventually you'll get there. So, you know, good luck and I will see you later. Bye.